Evening from New York, I'm Chris Hayes. Today, we are both closer to war and closer to peace than we've ever been in the war in Iran. If I asked you right now, what is the status of that war or of the ceasefire or both, what would you say? Frankly, we're having a pretty hard time keeping track, and it is literally our jobs. This afternoon around 4 p.m., the New York Times reported that the U.S. and Tehran are negotiating a one-page plan to reopen the Strait of Hormuz and end the war for 30 days. Again, we're in a temporary ceasefire right now. That's according to 3 Iranian officials. Now, notice I say Iranian officials because at this point, they're kind of the more trustworthy party in talking about whether we're having negotiations, at least at this point. So then, an hour later, U.S. officials said we were striking Iran, actually, apparently in self-defense after Iran fired on U.S. Navy ships in the Strait of Hormuz. Trump said our strikes were just a, quote, love tap. Also, Iran might be laying out new, stricter rules to impose on passage in the strait. So, to summarize, we are striking Iran, Iran is striking us, the Strait of Hormuz is closed, but apparently we are not at war and the ceasefire holds. It is, as it has been from the beginning, when he announced the war in the middle of the night with his baseball cap on from his golf palace, an incoherent clown show of mismanagement and misinformation by the man who made the whole ridiculous mess to begin with. From day one, he has been making daily announcements, each one contradicting the one before it, each one more wacky than the last. And if anyone ever had the time to put them all together, you would really get a sense of just how disjointed and chaotic and confused the commander-in-chief is. Well, actually, we do have the time to put them all together, and we thought it would be helpful to take a brief journey through the insane ups and downs of the war so far, as told through the Truth Social proclamations of one President Donald J. Trump. You'll remember the tough talk from the early days of the war. March 6th, there will be no deal with Iran except unconditional surrender. And then he added that his goal is to make Iran great again, MIGA. And it was working. The very next day, March 7th, Iran, which is being beat to hell, has apologized and surrendered to its Middle East neighbors. Okay, white flag, war's over. Okay, not so fast, March 9th. If Iran does anything that stops the flow of oil within the Strait of Hormuz, they will be hit by the United States of America 20 times harder than they have been hit thus far. Death, fire, and fury will rain upon them. So, I guess, war's back on. March 10th, 4:07 p.m. If Iran has put out any mines in the Hormuz Strait, and we have no reports of them doing so, we want them removed immediately. Okay? Red line there, no mines. Then literally 13 minutes later, I'm pleased to report that within the last few hours, we have hit and completely destroyed 10 inactive mine-laying boats and/or ships, with more to follow. March 14th, Trump announced NATO would join. Many countries, especially those who are affected by Iran's attempted closure of the Hormuz Strait, will be sending warships in conjunction with the United States of America to keep the strait open and safe. Adding later, this should have always been a team effort, and now it will be. 3 days later, the United States has been informed by most of our NATO allies that they don't want to get involved with our military operation against the terrorist regime of Iran. We will no longer need or desire the NATO countries' assistance. We never did. So, to reiterate, we didn't need their help, and we did again, now March 20th. The Hormuz Strait will have to be guarded and policed as necessary by other nations who use it. In other words, we're out. Not just a sort of coalition of all of us, we're out. 3 days later, a breakthrough negotiation. I am pleased to report the United States of America and the country of Iran have had, over the last 2 days, very good and productive conversations. 3 days after that, things hit a snag. The Iranian negotiators are very different and strange. Okay. April 1st, Iran's new regime president has just asked the United States of America for a ceasefire. 1 day later, it is time for Iran to make a deal before it is too late. There's nothing left of what still could become a great country. April 5th, open the effing strait, you crazy bastards, or you'll be living in hell. April 7th, in the morning, a whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. April 7th, in the evening, I agree to suspend the bombing and attack of Iran for a period of 2 weeks. This will be a double-sided ceasefire. We received a 10-point proposal from Iran and believe it is a workable basis on which to negotiate. Just after midnight. It was a big day for world peace. Then, the next day, there are reports Iran is charging fees to tankers going through the Hormuz Strait. They better not be. April 10th. The Iranians don't seem to realize they have no cards. April 17th. Iran has just announced the Strait of Iran is fully open and ready for full passage. Thank you. A great and brilliant day for the world. Strait of Iran? April 19th, 2 days later. Iran recently announced that they were closing the strait. Well, yeah. Went on like that until May 3rd, this past Sunday. Trump had a new tactic for opening the strait, which was always open, which we didn't need, which we were going to open, which we decided not to open, which our allies wouldn't help us open, that no one cares about whether it's open. Again, he returned to this idea of a coalition of the willing, if you will. Project Freedom will begin Monday morning. May 4th, Monday morning. Project Freedom is expanding its ranks. Perhaps it's time for South Korea to come and join the mission. Come on in, fellas, the water's fine. Tuesday, Project Freedom will be paused for a short period of time. That was all within 48 hours. Honestly, we could go on and on for 42 minutes for the whole show. There are hundreds of posts, and you can trust exactly none of them. All of them sort of contradicting each other, all of them in that same sort of deranged register. Just today, the Washington Post reported on a confidential CIA report which completely contradicts and undermines the strategic rationale of the administration's claims that Iran is on the verge of collapse. It says Iran can survive our own naval blockade of their blockade for 3 or 4 more months, that Iran still has about 75% of its mobile launchers and 70% of its missiles and are building more. The fact of the matter is this. Trump has us losing a war to Iran he never should have started in the first place. And no amount of increasingly frantic posting can change that fact. Trita Parsi is co-founder and executive vice president of the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft. Ben Rhodes served as deputy national security advisor to President Obama, now co-host of Crooked Media's Pod Save the World. And they both join me now. I guess first, because it has been a typically dizzying day in this, in which they were negotiating a one-page memo of understanding, and now they're both, the U.S. and Iran are firing each other. Let me start with you, Trita, on just how you understand the developments of just the last 12 hours or so.
I'm just as confused as everyone else. There was actually a degree of progress made in the talks just in the last 24, 36 hours. I detected a level of optimism, both from the U.S. government as well as from folks in Iran that I spoke to, who thought that things were going in the right direction. And now it remains to be seen, of course, if all of that has been derailed by this exchange of fire, love tap, whatever we want to call it, or if this ends up becoming a parenthesis. It's obviously not going to be helpful, but whether both sides will be finding a way to look past it. I wouldn't hold out my hopes. We've already seen in the past in which there has been moments of progress in these talks, and one way or another, oftentimes corrected to some truth social post that Trump has put forward, that progress has been derailed.
Ben, my sense of watching this, both the reporting and going through all these, is that Trump keeps trying to invent leverage he doesn't have. That fundamentally, the question of leverage is a question of, strategic posture, about, relative military strength, about who can control the strait. And Trump wants to create leverage he doesn't have. The sort of counter blockade was an attempt to do that. And then we get the reporting today from the Washington Post. It's like they can last 3 or 4 months doing that. Is that your sense, too, that there's an attempt to kind of find some trump card here that ends this on favorable terms to the U.S. that doesn't actually exist?
Yeah, there are 2 fundamental problems there, Chris. I mean, the first is that we said at the time that he launched the war that he had no clear objectives for the war. He seemed to have been sold a bill of goods by Prime Minister Netanyahu that the Iranian regime would collapse, they couldn't close the strait, you can take out the nuclear program. And so he kind of had a whole list of things that he said were going to happen, none of which have happened. And now we're just desperately trying to open a strait that was open before the war began. The second thing, which is more fundamental and gets to your question about leverage, and Trita remembers this from 10 years ago when we had the Iran nuclear deal debate, you cannot do this militarily. Like, Trump doesn't understand Iran, and he doesn't understand the fact that you cannot destroy the Iranian regime through an air campaign. You cannot destroy the Iranian nuclear program through an air campaign. You can only contain that nuclear program, not eliminate it, through diplomacy. And so he keeps grasping for some military maneuver that doesn't involve ground troops, because he doesn't want to do that, that will somehow allow him to appear to have defeated Iran militarily. And the problem is he cannot defeat Iran militarily. And in fact, Iran has inflicted far more damage on U.S. bases and facilities across the Middle East than the Pentagon or the U.S. government has been willing to acknowledge. They're far more resilient than he wants to acknowledge. And so he either needs to accept that he failed, that this war was a failure, a costly failure in human life and in resources, and just kind of take a deal in which the strait is reopened and Iran is going to get some revenue either out of the strait or some sanctions relief, and hopefully maybe ship their stockpile of highly enriched uranium out of the country, or he's just going to continue to try to look for some partial military action that somehow makes him look like he defeated Iran, but that's not going to happen. So to use his own Truth Social post, he really doesn't have a lot of cards here, Chris.
Yeah, and on the other side, I mean, obviously the key asymmetry here is the political pain of particularly high gas prices, right? I mean, this is just obvious to everyone. We have seen this movie before. I thought this quote from Zeteo's reporting, where they said they know they can Carter him, a senior administration official with the intelligence internal deliberations say, referring to how the Iranian hostage crisis helped tank Jimmy Carter's presidency by the time of the 1980, U.S. election. Do you think that's how the Iranians see the key leverage here, and what ultimately ends up being sort of their trump card?
Yeah, because essentially the Iranian government, which is now actually even more dominated than was before the war by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, right? I mean, by taking out some of the, not just the supreme leader, but people like Larijani, who could have been an interlocutor, and starting a war, the IRGC, they're the ones who control the strait, right? So the negotiators have to check with the IRGC on any deal. They don't care about absorbing economic pain. Frankly, they've already absorbed it through maximum pressure U.S. sanctions. Tragically, they don't care that much about the plight of their own people. So they're willing to sit there and absorb a lot of economic pain and find ways to get revenue, which they've been very good at because we've taught them how to do that because of our sanctions. They know that they're willing to absorb more economic pain than American politics will sustain with high gas prices. And so there's an asymmetry here because it's existential for them. They're not going to negotiate away their regime, and they know that there's a midterm election in this country, and that the American people don't support this war, and so that they have a lot of cards in that respect. To again return to one of Trump's analogies.
Trita, you said something about the sort of Truth Social post, and it's interesting. I think because Donald Trump sort of left Twitter and he's been on Truth Social, there's a strange thing where he can be. I mean, if they were in your face all the time, if anyone you knew or like someone that you worked with, a friend, and was posting like this, you would be really concerned for them. You would have a conversation. Like, there's not a person with a boss who exists whose boss would not be intervening if this was your posting, right? But in American discourse, it kind of flies under the radar because people aren't on Truth Social. But you seem to be saying that like the posts and the rhetoric do matter in the context of whatever diplomacy might bring a resolution to this crisis.
Oh, absolutely. And Ben would know this much better than me. But one of the things that the Obama administration did so brilliantly back in 2009 when it came in is that Obama really worked very hard to change the atmospherics between the two countries in order to make it conducive to a diplomatic process and diplomatic success. What we're seeing right now is completely the opposite. I'm not saying that the president should start sending out love letters to Iran or anything like that, but at a minimum, if both sides are recognizing that we're at a very sensitive stage in a negotiation, then it is crucial not only to avoid these different things that we saw in the Persian Gulf right now, and we don't know for the full story or exactly how it started, but at a minimum, make sure that the messaging is disciplined and, again, designed to advance the negotiations and U.S. interests. And that's not really what we're seeing right now. We're seeing a lot of impulsiveness that seems to be driven by a sense of desperation. You mentioned it earlier on about this blockade of the blockade. I mean, according to the administration and according to the Foundation for Defense of Democracies that apparently cooked up this idea, Iran should have collapsed 13 days ago. And here we are. So there's this constant pathological search for a silver bullet that brings the Iranians to their knees and avoids the unavoidable reality that we're going to have to make a compromise.
That's right. A negotiated settlement of some kind is the way out of this very clearly. Trita Parsi, Ben Rhodes, Thank you both. Don't forget to catch Ben and the highlights of all the Crooked Media podcasters, including my wife, on MS Now, Saturday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern. Coming up, the brand new MS Now reporting that Kash Patel is giving his own security team lie detector tests. Senator Chris Van Hollen joins me next. On the Foreign Relations Committee, and he joins me now. Well, I can't imagine you had much confidence before in the director of the FBI, but do you think Kash Patel should step down?
Oh, I do, Chris. Look, Kash Patel was bad at his job when he's sober. We can only imagine what a risk he poses to the public safety when he's completely incapacitated. And if he were a private citizen, this would be his own business. But when you're the FBI director, you have to be standing ready for any kind of emergency that faces our country. And so if you're so drunk that you're incapacitated and can't wake up in the morning and do your job, he's putting all the rest of us at risk. So bottom line, yes. He should never have been nominated, should never have been confirmed, and he should be fired.
As we play the video of him drinking a beer, I will say that he is said that he's never been drunk on the job. He's sued the Atlantic for defamation over that. But he's also, I want to get your reaction to the fact that we're now seeing a sort of upping of the level of aggression in terms of the FBI targeting. We also have reporting that there's an investigation that's been opened around the reporting into this. It seems to me that the FBI has gotten more aggressive, and the Department of Justice, in going after perceived, critics or political enemies of the president. Do you feel like we have entered some new phase in terms of the push to use those institutions as essentially weapons of the president?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we've seen from the beginning Trump used the Justice Department and the FBI as a weapon against his adversaries. And of course, we're seeing this in spades with the renewed, effort to go after James Comey. We saw the, acting director of, we saw the acting attorney general together with Patel bringing down those charges. And now we also see them, Chris, going after various groups that they believe don't share the president's views, which, of course, is a gross violation of freedom of speech.
You've been around Washington for a long time. You've been in different administrations. And one of the things that I keep coming back to, there's a period of time where my wife worked in the Obama White House. I've been around a lot of people who worked in the White House. And is it those tend to be extremely difficult and busy jobs? People don't have a lot of time to futz around. They don't have a lot of time to do things that aren't their job. They're constantly in meetings. And I just keep being struck every day when we see a bunch of people standing around the president, doing some long-winded cabinet meeting. When you see Kash Patel, when you see the reporting about how much time he appears to be spending just on stamping out the leaks and managing that the FBI director's got a big job. All these people got big jobs. Like there's real threats the country faces, and it's just not clear to me that anyone is doing those jobs.
I think we should be very worried because he spends an awful lot of time jet-setting around, going to events. And again, if he was a private citizen just doing this on his own time, it would be one thing. But he is using the resources of the federal government. He's using taxpayer resources that we would like to see helping make us more safe. And instead, he's focused on everything else except for that. And frankly, diverting resources not only, to sort of frivolous issues, but also diverting resources away from going after real bad guys to the kind of things that you're talking about right now. And so we're going to have a hearing in the Senate Appropriations Committee next week, and Patel will be testifying. And you can be sure many of us will be asking him exactly these kind of questions.
You're on that Appropriations Committee. I want to ask you a question about some other witnesses that you have lined up. But first, let me ask about your role in the Foreign Relations Committee. Since we were talking about the Iran situation in the earlier block, as a member of the Senate Foreign Relations, do you have a read on where things are or today? And is there anyone at all in the White House deigning to communicate with the members of the Senate about what the heck is going on? To your first question, it's complete chaos and confusion, and that's been
the pattern since day one with respect to communication from people in the White House or at the State Department. If there is any, it's going on only with Republicans. I mean, the communication that I've seen was early on, behind closed doors, classified briefings, because they didn't want the public to know just how disorganized and incompetent they've been. Because now we're seeing what's going on. Gas prices are going up. And the most important, I think, story that came out today, Chris, was that the U.S. intelligence agencies have said what we really all knew, but they're saying it is important, that Iran can essentially outlast the U.S. blockade in the region. And that's bad news for Trump's entire strategy, because his entire strategy is somehow dependent on them not being able to survive this blockade.
You've been very focused over the last few months on the region in the Middle East, and not just the war, but also this uptick that we've seen in violence by some Israeli settlers against Palestinians in the West Bank. You've been pushing for legislation for blocking of arms sales, for votes on this issue. This has exploded in many respects, both in Israeli media, in Israeli social media, in the calls from Israeli politicians to crack down as well. Is there any progress the U.S. is making in using its leverage to bring some of these attacks to a close?
No. In fact, the Trump administration has essentially given this extremist Netanyahu government a blank check to continue to expand illegal settlements, illegal outposts. They push more and more Palestinians off of their lands. You see violent settlers attacks daily against Palestinians, with the complicity and sometimes with the actual collaboration of the IDF. And we have an ambassador there, Chris, Ambassador Huckabee, that pretty much is cheering all of this on. So, no, U.S. taxpayers should be very upset that our resources are going in the form of a blank check to this Netanyahu government that's engaged in what amounts to slow-motion ethnic cleansing in the West Bank.
Final question for you about that role on the Appropriation Committee. I saw today, and correct me if I'm wrong, because kind of trying to stay on top of a lot of stuff, that there's a notice of Supreme Court justices appearing before that same committee who, like Kash Patel and like all of the United States government, with some exceptions, the Fed, receive their appropriations from the first branch of the U.S. government that has the power of the purse, being Congress, and that they will come before your committee in the process of that appropriations request. Are you looking forward to having some Supreme Court justices testifying before your committee?
Yes, Chris, I am. We don't know yet exactly which Supreme Court justices they will be, but it will be good to have them in front of the committee and ask them some pressing questions, just like it'll be good to ask Kash Patel. And I should point out that the week after that, we have the acting attorney general in front of our committee. Right. So it's going to be a busy couple weeks working to hold people accountable. They're asking for more funds for their department. And my view is, if you want more funds for your department, you better show us how you're doing your job.
Seems fair. Senator Chris Van Hollen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Still to come, Donald Trump may be focused on his billion-dollar ballroom that you are now going to pay for, but it isn't the only shiny thing catching his attention these days. Ahead. For as utterly insane as American politics is today, right now, 2 years from now, as we face 2028, the seismic transformation that artificial intelligence is poised to wreak on the country could very likely be the #1 issue. It could be drowning everything else out. And so I've spent the last few months examining this issue for this new mini-series on my podcast, Why Is This Happening? The project is called The AI Endgame. I started by talking to Derek Thompson, New York Times bestselling author, who spent a lot of time thinking and writing about the AI revolution, and specifically what it will mean for us, for all of us, for the American economy, for our politics, for our society, if the predicted massive job dislocation actually happens and manages to concentrate even more money in the hands of billionaires.
Without being able to see exactly where these companies are going to go in the next few years, I'm confident that this technology is proving real value for a lot of companies and that they're going to continue to pay a ton of money for this in the years to come.
If you talk about Amazon or talk about Uber, right? If you talk about the sort of subsidized to scale and then have pricing power, the thing that seems so obvious to me, and I think the thing that everyone kind of agrees in, is like there's going to be some big winners here and just a few of them. Yeah. And that's part of why so much money, people are placing these bets, because the payout on the other end, when everyone else dies off and there's whoever's left is going to have control. But that gets us back around to the sort of central, to me, political economic question, which is about this concentration and about who wields that power. It is a pretty useful it's a very useful technology. It's a lucrative technology. It's a powerful and important technology. A small number of human beings are going to control it. That question becomes so primal and so unignorable that I think you're right, that it just forces its way to the front.
And I want to be clear. I think that is scary on its own merits. Like, take AI out of the picture.
Yes.
I am not anti-billionaire. I am fearful of a world where billionaires amass so much wealth that they can easily pay for power. That is what I'm most afraid of, is not just a world where billionaires control artificial intelligence, which itself might be dystopian, but a world where billionaires, by virtue of their AI wealth, are able to control everything else because they can buy political power. That is scary to me. And you don't have to be, I think, you don't have to buy into the entire agenda of left populism to see how dangerous it is for power to be amassed in such a small number of hands.
That's kind of the rub, right? Power amassed in such a small number of hands. You can listen to that entire conversation right now. Just search "Why Is This Happening" on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. You don't have to look at me. You can just listen. New episodes drop every Tuesday. Next week, you can catch my conversation with Wharton professor Ethan Mollick about how AI will affect basically every industry and how to think about what that is going to look like.
We need to be thinking about the policy implications of this, which is, again, you're sort of saying, where am I in the hype scale, 0 to 10? My worry about the closer to 0 is that there's a lot of people who really just think AI is going to go away. That there's something here that this isn't real. The systems aren't as good as you say they are. They make mistakes. This is real. There has not been major layoffs because of AI yet. I don't think that continues infinitely. Maybe people get better jobs, but we need the systems in place to cushion it, which means we believe this is real.
Still ahead, he may be floundering at home and abroad, but the President of the United States just got a brand new golden statue of himself. That's next. Deep into its let them eat cake phase. Do you remember that luxury 747 that Qatar gifted to Donald Trump last year, the one he wants to convert into Air Force One at a taxpayer cost of up to $1 billion, which appears to be the ballroom cost now? Well, we just learned that the Air Force is rushing to get that jet into service in time for the 4th of July festivities in Washington. Two people familiar told Reuters this week. That's while the cost of air travel is spiking as jet fuel goes through the roof and Spirit Airlines is still bankrupt. Here's another one. This week, the administration notified the federal courts of upcoming activity at the planned site of Trump's proposed 250-foot victory arch across the Arlington National Cemetery. What's it a victory arch for? I don't know. Meanwhile, the average national price of gas hit $4.56 a gallon today, rising more than a quarter for the second week in a row. This morning, Trump was happily posting about the dedication of this statue, a great golden 15-foot likeness of him pumping his fist, mounted on a 7,000-pound pedestal at his Doral Golf Resort. The artist told the Daily Beast it was his idea to give the bronze statue a gold leaf finish, saying that when he suggested it to Trump's team, and I quote here, "They love the idea, of course. It's like pitching ice water to a man dying of thirst. It was not a hard sell." Yesterday, Trump also spent some time showing reporters renderings of a UFC fighting match that's planned for his birthday on the White House lawn.
It's going to happen right in front of the White House. Here's a picture. Here's another one. This is another. They're going all the way out, all online. It's all people invited. Our country is invited to this. It's free.
Oh, it's free. Of course, there is Trump's main obsession, one he returns to any chance he gets, a big, beautiful gilded ballroom to replace the White House wing that he summarily demolished. The ballroom was originally going to be built with private funds. This week, Republicans proposed taking $1 billion of taxpayer money to secure Trump's future ballroom.
I'm good at ballrooms, and we're giving you I believe it's the best. It will be the best ever built, and it will have windows that are thicker than any ballroom I've ever built. I usually have glass that's about 1/4 of an inch thick. This is about 6 inches thick.
That was in an event to honor, ready for this, military moms ahead of Mother's Day. David Rose, a national security reporter for MSNOW. Michelle Goldberg is an opinion columnist for the New York Times, and they both join me now. I have to say that I think this just happened. Do we have this, that the president rode their motorcade, drove over the painted reflecting pool without any water in it? And I gotta say, I feel like I'm watching, like, is this Tom Hanks in Big? Is this, what's the money where they have to spend all the money? What's the
the Richard Pryor one?
Yeah, the Richard Pryor one where he's got to like spend all the money. Like, does he have some wager of how out of touch he can seem? It feels like there's a bet of like, Bruce.
I don't know if it's a bet or if it's just something that always happens to cloistered autocrats,
right?
Because they always behave in the exact same way, almost with the same aesthetic, right? There's something about it, whether you're in North Korea or Turkmenistan or Washington, D.C.
The Turkmenbashi was the notorious Turkmen dictator who was also building gold statues himself. I mean, at the same time, and I said this to Chris Van Hellen, I think we all have the sense that the country kind of, the country is an enormous civil service. It's, literally millions of incredibly dedicated folks who do all the stuff every day. There's a crew of folks on a submarine, and like Donald Trump golfing doesn't, they're still going to run that submarine, right? But it's also the case that like his checked outedness, his manifest boredom does seem to be affecting the quagmire of Iran that he has gotten himself in.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of you and very important for you to talk about that event, which was for the mothers of military members. There are 50,000 Americans in the Gulf today risking their lives for this country. 50,000. And the image of the president driving through the bright blue, empty of water, reflecting pool for Abraham Lincoln is just sort of extraordinary. And my fear, and it's what I'm saying it in a less colorful way, the bubble he is living in.
Right.
And this gets back to the importance of the war. And is he getting hard advice? Was he warned, sir, they're going to take over the Strait of Hormuz? Was he actually told?
He has literally said multiple times in front of cameras with microphones in front of him, nobody thought they would do that. Like, I don't know anything about the Strait of Hormuz other than one thing. I know one thing, that if you attack Iran, they will take over the Strait of Hormuz. The only thing I've ever known about the Strait of Hormuz.
The most important energy route, waterway in the world. And that's how Iran has come out of this so successfully. And it's sort of amazing to watch him so desperately push for a deal. In the framing of this one-page, 14-point memo as a peace agreement was astonishing. The Iran nuclear deal from the Obama era, that was 159 pages just to settle the nuclear program issues. So it's this desperate effort people should be warning him, or that's what you want. Everyone's afraid of their boss. But again, lives are at stake here.
Well, you both make a really good point here, which is that there's something unnerving about it, not just because of the eccentricity of the behavior.
Well, it also has like very kind of fall of the Republic vibes,
yes.
Right? I mean, it has kind of Roman Empire. It's like giving Roman Empire.
Yes, it's giving Roman Empire. It's giving the madness of King George. It's giving Nero and the fiddle. Like this. Let me give you another example and get your reaction to this, because this one really kind of like, again, I've been doing this for a long time. I've done a lot of Donald Trump stories. Every once in a while, one will like bring me up short. And this is one. Trump had an idea. He took his personally designed presidential challenge coin, which, those challenge coins. Such tokens are generally a palm-sized souvenir popular in the military and law enforcement circles, and glued it to the center of the Oval Office door at about eye level. In the weeks that followed, Trump made his way through the West Wing, seeking out new places to affix his coins. Golden and featuring the presidential seal, one by one, the president decorated the office doors of each of his deputies. The president of the United States is going around, apparently, hand gluing by himself, gluing coins on doors.
Right. So there's two things here, because on the one hand, that is maybe the least destructive way that he could be spending his time.
100%.
I also think that, So this ballroom that he's building, when after the revolution in Ukraine, when they chased out their Russian-aligned dictator, they turned his estate into a museum of corruption. And they preserved everything as it was so that people could walk through and see how he had lived at their expense. And to me, that's kind of a very good potential use of this ballroom, because somebody's going to have to preserve this to explain what happened.
That's such a good point. The other question too, there's the old joke about, the terrible food in such small portions. And I make that joke a lot about Trump, because a lot of times, to the point that you're just saying about the coins, it's like, well, do I want him like really locked in? Do I really want him in the Situation Room being like, what if we bring this destroyer over here? Like, I don't want that, right? So there is a little bit of a question of like benign versus malign neglect here.
But he won't. Look, I fear that it's a pyramid of fear. His and this is from writing a book I did about the Justice Department in the first Trump term, a volcanic temper. An aide in the Justice Department told me he was in the Oval Office when Trump erupted at Wilbur Ross, the billionaire Commerce Secretary, and screamed at him and shouted at him, just dressing him down. He said he'd never seen one grown man, sexism a little bit here, right, shout and treat another grown man that way. And he said that that Trump shouted at Wilbur Ross like he was a dog. And I think there's a fear of that. A fear of, I think Kane and the military are trying to do that. You see that in every press conference or whatever, but I think all the other cabinet appointees just sort of live in fear.
Well, one thing is clear, right, is that there's no one with a political sensibility in that White House who is worried about the median voter in a swing House district or a swing state in the Senate who can get him to do anything. Like, right? Because if so, it would be like, don't post the gold statue yourself. Don't. What are you doing? And that, I mean, I think that's the other worry here, is that the normal mechanisms of democratic accountability, which we have seen kind of pull on him different times in different ways. Child separation the first term, even what happened in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, where like it was horrible and tragic, and
Kristi Noem's not there anymore,
and they lost politically, and they kind of retreated. That seems a little bit gone.
Well, partly is just because he has, these are difficult things to protest, right? They kind of engender a sense of numb horror, but there's not going to be one breaking point where the country can kind of rise up and say, absolutely not.
Right. If you shoot an American on camera and kill them by masked agents, people will take to the streets. If you like build a ballroom, right? You're not going to get 1 million people in the streets to stop your ballroom.
Right. And so, obviously, I think that if Democrats take the House, there's going to be presumably nonstop hearings about the unbelievable corruption that's going on. But in the meantime, you would think that J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio would have some concern because they both have higher ambitions and their futures are tied to him. At the same time, their futures are tied to him. And so there's kind of nothing in it for them to risk a conflict with him.
And I also think that the Strait of Hormuz, i.e. gas prices, is a reality like he can't run away from. He can come up with all these stories about how we're winning and we're winning. Gas prices are not dropping. A one-page memo is not a peace agreement. And even if they pull this off, it's like a slow reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, and these prices will remain on higher for months, and it's the same.
I mean, the thing that it reminds me of, and I've said multiple times, is that I remember him trying to talk his way out of the virus, and it was like, we're going to stop testing and we're going to do this.
And it was always 2 weeks.
The virus doesn't care about your posts. Yep. You can post all you want. The virus can't read the posts.
And the virus. It seems Iranian generals don't care.
Yeah, exactly. Right, exactly. The Strait being closed is like a real thing. Michelle Goldberg, David Rowe, thank you both.
Thank you.
Stay tuned. In just a few minutes, Jen Psaki will be speaking with former Attorney General Eric Holder about the Republican plan to not even basically, to eliminate every black congressperson in the South. We'll be right back. And on this Thursday night, the briefing with Jen Psaki starts right now. Good evening, Jen.
Chris, I can't get over the story.